Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. The ICC issued arrest warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, the Israeli Prime Minister and the now sacked Defense Minister of Israel. They made a very thorough statement today clarifying the arrest warrants, and the purpose of this video is to go through all of the details of the statement coming from the ICC alongside detailed information about the outcome or potential outcomes and what usually happens after the arrest warrants are issued. But before I begin, I wanted to give you a bit of a background. The ICC Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan issued a request to have arrest warrants against the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the sacked Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. He also added the leaders of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, Yahya Sinwar, and MahmoudOD. Israel killed Yahya Sinwar and Ismail Haniyeh, and they also claimed that they killed MahmoudOD. However, that was not verified. The arrest warrants that have been issued today have only included Yoav Gallant and Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Defense Minister and the Israeli Prime Minister. They did not include anyone from Hamas, yet some mainstream media outlets, including big names like the BBC and others as well, are claiming that they issued an arrest warrant against MahmoudOD, which is completely not true. In the statement that was released by the ICC today, the name Hamas is only mentioned once, and the name MahmoudOD is not mentioned at all. The only names mentioned are Yoav Gallant and Benjamin Netanyahu and the state of Israel committing a genocide against the Gazan population. The ICC and the ICC Chief Prosecutor faced a lot of pressure to not go ahead with the arrest warrants, and this is something that the ICC Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan previously revealed. He said he had life threats, he had people calling him, leaders of world states calling him. We had senators blatantly sending him a letter threatening him and his family as well, that was paid for by AIPAC in the United States. Now, he continued despite all of that. At one point, he received a call from a Western leader, as he described him, saying that the ICC is not for the West. The ICC is for African nations and thugs like Putin, according to that Western leader in the conversation that Karim Khan revealed himself. The pressure continued to ramp up, mostly by Western countries against Karim Khan. There have been confirmed reports that Israel not only recruited politicians and senior figures from the United States, but from Britain as well and from other countries. The previous British government said that the ICC has no jurisdiction in the occupied territories, trying to allow Israel to get away with the arrest warrants or potential arrest warrants at the time. And clearly following that, we had more threats coming from Western leaders against the ICC Chief Prosecutor, and the most blatant one has been now the sexual allegations supposedly against Karim Khan. That's something that Israel is trying to capitalize on, saying that he's only issuing the arrest warrants and shifting the focus on Israel because he had the sexual assaults against him. Again, they are not substantiated and there has been no evidence whatsoever to support these claims, but that's something not surprising whatsoever. Countries like Israel and other war criminals, they will resort to anything to try and get themselves out of trouble. So we had delay for several months. Many people started to say that, well, you know, the arrest warrants are not coming, but now we have it. Before they issued the arrest warrants, Israel tried to challenge. However, this challenge was rejected by the ICC, and now they indeed went ahead with it against Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. So this was published on the website of the International Criminal Court under the title Situation in the State of Palestine. ICC Pretrial Chamber 1 rejects the State of Israel's challenges to jurisdiction and issues warrants for arrests for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. Today, November 21st, pretrial chamber 1 of the International Criminal Court, in its composition for the situation in the state of Palestine, unanimously issued 2 decisions rejecting challenges by the state of Israel brought under Articles 18 and 19 of the Rome Statute. It also issued warrants of arrest for Benjamin Netanyahu and Mr. Yoav Gallant. In the first section, they are describing the challenge of Israel, claiming that they don't have jurisdiction, and of course they refused it, saying that they are in a position to issue arrest warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. Here they continue. The chamber issued warrants of arrest for 2 individuals, again debunking the lies that have been spread by some mainstream media outlets that are saying there was also an arrest warrant against MahmoodOD, trying to somehow put Hamas in the position of Israel. Now, I previously spoke about the flaw in the initial request made by Karim Khan, that it even included leaders of Hamas, somehow making them equal with the Israeli occupiers and war criminals. The leaders of Hamas are leaders of a resistance movement working to liberate its people and its land from occupying colonizers. They cannot be made equal to their occupiers that have been committing crimes against humanity for the past 76 years in Palestine. And at the time, I also spoke about the fact that there is no legal basis to putting these people or trying to issue arrest warrants against them. However, now they're dead. The only person who is still alive or might be still alive is MahmoodOD. Therefore, the ICC resorted to issuing the arrest warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. Why are they issuing the arrest warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant? For crimes against humanity and war crimes committed from at least the 8th of October until at least 20 May 2024, the day the prosecution filed the applications for warrants of arrest. This is very important because they are not excluding claims that might come and join the ICC when it comes to periods before the 8th of October and anything also that happened after the request has been submitted. So we can have more people coming up, like other countries joined the genocide claim that South Africa took Israel to when it comes to the ICJ. More can be added to this, and I will add later on what can happen when it comes to the defendants as well, and what they can do, and whether there is a chance that this can be revoked. The arrest warrants are classified as secret in order to protect witnesses and to safeguard the conduct of the investigations. However, the chamber decided to release the information below, since conduct similar to that addressed in the warrant of arrest appears to be ongoing. This indicates that they perhaps wanted to issue it earlier on, but the safeguarding concerns delayed this. However, they viewed it as important to release it now so that the people know there are indeed arrest warrants and these people are war criminals. They added, moreover, the chamber considers it to be in the interest of victims and their families that they are made aware of the warrants' existence. At the outset, the chamber considered that the alleged conduct of Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant falls within the jurisdiction of the court, again confirming that they are not accepting the challenge of Israel and of Britain previously and other countries too. The chamber recalled that in a previous composition, it already decided that the court's jurisdiction in the situation extended to Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. Furthermore, the chamber declined to use its discretionary proprietary motu powers to determine the admissibility of the 2 cases at this stage. This is without prejudice to any determination as to the jurisdiction and admissibility of the cases at a later stage. They later on went to the crimes, saying that with regards to the crimes, the chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that Benjamin Netanyahu, born on 21 October 1949, Prime Minister of Israel at the time of the relevant conduct, and Mr. Gallant, born on 8 November 1958, Minister of Defense of Israel at the time of the alleged conduct, each bear criminal responsibility for the following crimes as co-perpetrators for committing the acts jointly with others: the war crime of starvation as a method of warfare, and the crimes against humanity of murder, persecution, and other inhumane acts. The chamber also found reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant each bear criminal responsibility as civilian superiors for the war crime of intentionally directing an attack against civilian population. And then they went on to the crimes to describe the fact that they found evidence of war crimes on the ground, and that they have reasonable ground that at the time international humanitarian law related to the international armed conflict between Israel and Palestine was applied as well, and that they found it appropriate to continue and issue the arrest warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu and against Yoav Gallant as well. They also provided here in this section background when it comes to the jurisdiction, something that Israel challenged, and also highlighting the fact that they have the authority and power to follow Israel and also issue the arrest warrants. And the final thing they added in their statement here, that the chamber addressed that there are reasonable grounds to believe that Netanyahu and Gallant bear criminal responsibility as civilian superiors for the war crime of intentionally directing attacks against civilian population in Gaza. In this regard, the chamber found that the material provided by the prosecution only allowed it to make findings on 2 incidents that qualified as attacks that were intentionally directed against civilians. This also indicates that much more can be provided to them, because there is much more to be provided to get these people arrest warrants. Reasonable grounds to believe exist that Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant, despite having measures available to them to prevent or repress the commission of crimes or ensure the submittal of the matter to the competent authorities, failed to do so. So the issuing of the arrest warrants is limited to 2 cases according to our understanding based on this. So the big question is, of course, what happens next? This is the next part that I want to talk to you about. And of course, I wanted a thorough but not full, complete brief of all of the text, because some things were repetitive when it comes to the text that came from the ICC. But I want it to be as thorough as possible when it comes to clarification, firstly, as to who the arrest warrants are issued against, because we have lies being spread. And the fact that we're only talking about Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, more people can be added from Israel later on too. Many Israeli leaders and Israelis in the army fear traveling abroad due to potential legal action being taken against them in any arrest warrants issued. As a matter of fact, some countries are already taking steps when it comes to soldiers who served in the genocide army of Israel. Now, the big question is of course, what happens next? Okay, beautiful. We have arrest warrants. Well, will they be arrested? Are we going to see them in prison? So usually when you have an ICC arrest warrant, and I gathered a couple of bits of information when it comes to what usually happens after that, several steps and scenarios follow. Now, you need a lot of cooperation. This is key thing, because the ICC, they don't have a lot of enforcement. So cooperation is one key thing. And the following would be a breakdown of what typically happens after an issue, an arrest warrant is issued. Firstly, notification. They notify and communicate. The ICC notifies the relevant state parties and authorities about the arrest warrant. A request is sent to countries that are members of the ICC, asking them to cooperate in arresting the individual if they enter their jurisdiction. Non-member states can also be notified if they are relevant to the case, but they are not legally obliged to comply. The second thing, which is the important bit, cooperation from the states. The ICC relies heavily on cooperation from states for enforcement, as it does not have its own police force. If the accused is in a country that is a member of the ICC, that country is generally required to arrest and transfer the individual to the ICC, unless they have specific legal grounds not to comply. If the accused is a non-member country, it depends on whether that country is willing to cooperate voluntarily. There is a scope for non-member countries to be active too. That's if Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant might feel or try and feel safe in a country that is a non-member of the ICC. And by the way, when it comes to the ICC and the ICJ, certain countries can have jurisdiction, or they can fall under certain things within the scope of the ICC, but not in its entirety. For example, if some countries are signed to the Genocide Convention, for example, they will have to take action against the country committing genocide. If they're not signed, then they don't. And they don't have to be signed to everything else. However, with the ICC, it's a little bit different than the ICJ. The next step, the third step, is arrest and transfer. If a state arrests the individual, they are transferred to the ICC's detention center, which is located in The Hague, Netherlands. Once transferred, the ICC begins pre-trial proceedings, which include confirming charges and setting dates for trials. Then you move on to the public and political reactions. Arrest warrants can lead to significant political consequences, especially if high-profile or sitting officials are targeted. Governments may face internal and external pressure to comply or refuse cooperation. The issuance of a warrant can sometimes lead to increased tension or cause the individual to go into hiding. What happens if they fail to arrest? This is what happens. If the targeted individual is not arrested, the warrant remains active indefinitely. That means Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant will have arrest warrants issued against them up until they die. There is one option to revoke, which I'm going to get to in a sec. However, that is extremely unlikely in the cases of Yoav Gallant and Benjamin Netanyahu, because the ICC arrest warrants were established based on two verified bits of information that came, and in the case of Gaza, there are thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands even. The ICC may continue to request cooperation and monitor the individual's movements, and in cases where an individual remains at large, the ICC can issue additional publicity measures like red notices through Interpol, which helps in tracking internationally. They have an option that is called in absentia, which is quite rare. In absentia proceedings, the ICC generally does not conduct trials in absentia without the defendant present. However, they may proceed with limited pre-trial measures like collecting evidence and interviewing witnesses, even if the accused is not in custody. And the final bit is the revoking part, or the revision of a warrant. If new evidence emerges or the circumstances change, the ICC can revoke or revise an arrest warrants, and sometimes diplomatic or political negotiations can lead to voluntary surrenders or agreements that result in the revision of the warrant's terms. This is what usually happens after that. So the key challenges are the enforcement. Of course, they lack enforcement, and they rely heavily on member states to enforce the warrants, and of course the political obstacles. High-profile targets can use political influence to avoid arrest, which is what we've seen so far. Not only Israel itself, Israel recruited most Western countries to or at least a big chunk of them, to intimidate the ICC and the ICJ and the ICC chief prosecutor, and many of them have been public, like the senator's letter to the ICC chief prosecutor, Biden, Sunak at the time, the previous British prime minister, saying they don't have jurisdiction, and that call that they received from the Western leaders saying, you know, the ICC is not for the West, right? It's for Africa and Putin. And of course, you might have states not complying. With regards to Israel, they are having a moment of hysteria now and are acting in a very childish manner, the typical entitled and victim type talk. You know, they are anti-Semitic. How dare they do that against us? This goes against all of the values, and the list goes on, of course. And they're acting like it's not going to change anything. However, the fact of the matter is the statements that are coming out are revealing something that they're trying to hide, which is a lot of panic and hysteria. Firstly, a blatant confirmation from the world's biggest courts, the ICJ and the ICC, that you are talking about a genocidal terrorist entity with war criminals leading it. That's a stamp of shame on everyone who hasn't taken action against this genocidal entity. The largest legal bodies on earth saying that they are genocidal war criminals, starving people and killing them for no reason, innocent civilians, targeting them deliberately, confirmed and verified, and not even with all of the evidence we have, only with limited evidence so far, by the way. Yet many of these countries, especially in Western establishments, they are still trying to protect it and even spin the actual news that the ICC sent today, published today, especially when it comes to an arrest warrant, this imaginary arrest warrant being issued against Mohammed Deif, the military commander of Hamas, like the BBC and other garbage mainstream media outlets published. Benjamin Netanyahu is having many intense talks now. They take it seriously. If they didn't take it seriously, they wouldn't have tried to challenge it, by the way. So that's why they tried to challenge it previously, and they pressured so many countries to act against them. If they didn't care about them, well, why would they ask the United States and Britain and France and everyone else to try and threaten the ICC and the chief prosecutor, and now having fabricated claims against him about sexual assault and all of that, just because he dared to call for the arrest warrants, despite the initial flaw of having members of the legitimate armed resistance against an occupying genocidal entity in them. But again, now they're dead, and we only have arrest warrants being issued against Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. Now, of course, this case is something that is going to be in the headlines, and we're going to have many updates about it in the coming days, and I will surely be covering that up with you in my coming videos.